Raz,
Michael.
we're back.
Yes.
We're gonna jump right in. Our t-shirts have changed a little bit today. Normally,
I've noticed. I appreciate
hopefully
it.
there's some respect across the table.
There's a lot of respect
for the craft.
You get the respect of Uniqlo on the side.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. We can have a whole discussion about that.
And I have my generals.
Yeah,
So.
which I normally wear, but just so everybody knows, this is one of the shirts. Is it from the conference or just the shirt?
This
you
is from
did?
the conference. This
Yeah.
is the festival itself.
Which I never get to go. I think as makers, we should try to go next year.
Yeah, I'd
we're
love to
gonna
see you there.
We're gonna talk
Yeah,
Yeah,
about
we can talk about that later.
Splice Beta, but I'm wearing the pink tuk tuk, which I love the shirt.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason why I'm out of uniform. But
But it fits you, man.
it
I
does.
like
It's actually one of my. He knows it's one of my favorite shirts. I think I was one of the first to order. Right.
It holds up your pecs.
Yeah.
It's good.
I need to work out more.
Let's introduce our
Yes, Alan Soon, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thanks for coming.
Long time coming.
Yeah, I think most people will know you, but
think so.
Well, you know, we're getting quite an audience that's not in. Actually, a lot of people don't know this. Singapore is not our core audience.
Is that right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it's
Where is it?
U.S., UK,
Germany.
Germany, Israel because of him.
I wonder what brings them in.
We've been shot by it. And the funny thing is on the audio, because audio doesn't really grow, it is Singapore. But on the video side, both long and shorts, it's
Sure.
completely internationalized.
Is
And
that
it's
right?
Singapore's way down the list.
And this is what
actually.
we want to achieve. We want
Yeah.
to go global. We
We're
want
global.
to progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder what the algo sees and is serving.
We know it's the shorts that pick it up, but we haven't.
Ah.
It's really hard to figure it out. But we're not much of a Singapore podcast,
Yeah,
believe it
yeah.
or not. So I know you from Yahoo. But
Yeah.
we're gonna get into more of
We
it.
can talk about that
I
later.
kind of think of you as the most famous media guy that I know in the region.
You don't know enough people in the region.
It could be, but for me, because I think you've always crossed this intersection of media and tech, and that's not most media people in my book.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that. I think
Yeah,
it's going to
we'll
make
get to that.
an interesting
It's one of
conversation.
the things that I'm a bit nervous today because we have a pro in media.
Yeah.
And we do in
I don't-
media.
Wow.
So,
It was like when Alex was here, and then
yeah.
Well, the question is this media? We can get to that.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
we just went full circle there. So we always like to ask. A lot of times we're asking people like, "Hey, how did you get to Singapore, and why are you in Singapore?" But you're Singaporean.
I am Singaporean.
But
yeah.
if you look into your history, you left to maybe it's just because of careers, and you're in Hong Kong, you're in Japan, and
Yeah.
you've come back.
I've come back.
Love
been
to
back
hear
for
just-
about maybe 15 years. now,
Yeah,
it feels like.
why did you leave? Was it a plan to come back? That's the stuff that I think would be interesting because a lot of Singaporeans just stay put.
Yeah.
Some move completely.
Yeah, no, it's kind of a funny story, and it's funny when you talk about it in hindsight, to see how things came together. I did my undergrad in Canada, in Vancouver, came back for national service, like the rest of us do. Really hating it at that moment, thinking, oh shoot, wait, can I swear?
Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Fuck. Okay, no.
Shit. Yeah, go ahead.
And I thought, I'm going to have to find a way back to Canada again, right? Thinking that I'll just do this national service thing and then head back and get a job like everyone else does, right? But, I did my undergrad studies in communication. And so when I came back here, it was time to do national service, the Army had just launched a radio station. And they said, look, you've got some kind of a communication degree. We think that sounds like journalism. Can you come and write the news reports for us? And so that's where I spent most of my national service, which was fantastic. Right after BMT, I went straight to the radio station, started writing the hourly news broadcast.
Helpless BMT, basic military training.
Basic military training.
Nailed it.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, well done. So that's how it all got started, right? And I always thought, I'd be done and then I'd be out the door, and it really wasn't. So that was the start of my journalism career, which was quite interesting. Did that and then joined TCS at the time, Television Corporation of Singapore, the predecessor to MediaCorp. So I was part of that first generation that went over and basically manned the newsrooms at MediaCorp at the time. And then off to Hong Kong. I worked at a magazine, IDG, Computer World, a long time ago. Some of you
Hence
will remember.
the intersection of tech and media.
Yeah. I've always been into the tech stuff anyway, and so that was an interesting kind of crossover. Didn't last long. Magazine life was not as fun as TV, and so I went back into TV again at Star TV. Wrote the evening 7 p.m. news out of Hong Kong. Did that for a little bit, and then off to Tokyo. Did Bloomberg there for about 3 years, writing the morning shows. And then Kyoto News, where I edited the English wires. And then to Taipei, where I was jobless for a little bit, but it gave me a chance to study Chinese again. I'm still failing it. And then, Singapore came knocking. CNBC had a job opening here for a senior producer doing the midday show. And so I put up my hand and came back. So I've been back for about 15 years now, And soon after CNBC, that's where I met you at Yahoo. I think I was at CNBC for, it must have been 5 years or so. And then Yahoo started to take an interest in this region and wanted to grow out the emerging markets, right? As they had at that time. Fantastic job, a chance to build teams from scratch, starting opening offices around the region, getting the first generation of journals, online
It was the
journals.
boom Yahoo time.
That was a boom Yahoo times. And it was also a really great time because it was the start of this pivot point, right, where traditional media started to see where things could go, right, and Yahoo was able to demonstrate some of that early on. So that was a great point of my career. Yeah, and again, that's where we met.
Yeah,
For me, it's when I listen to your career and your path, sometimes your career is taking you to places where you say, okay, one thing led to another.
Yeah.
But did you have the point you say, oh, I'm so tuned in, I know this is going to be part of my life?
No, never. I mean, it was always a question of opportunity, right? And I told myself, if there's an opportunity to do this, X, Y, and Z, you should always do it, especially if it gives you a chance to live somewhere else. So that was my first principle, and that was it. I had no idea what else was going to come up, right? And this was a time when the internet was starting to make cause disruption across the industry, right? So a lot of these things, you had no idea where it was going to go.
But it didn't matter.
It didn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm 51 now, right? You look back at this career and you go, yeah, okay, some things I put up my hands for, but for the most part, you don't know what's ahead of you.
But I think if media was kind of the thing pulling you along for journalism in other cities, I guess it could have just been as simple as, another job in another city. It looks okay enough to go. Right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. As long as it pays you enough to figure it out, I think it's always fun, right? Everything else you just add to it. Everything else is additive, right? The experience of being in a new city, having a new network of friends, learning a new media, right? Going from magazines to news wires, and just figuring out all these different formats. I'm glad I had that opportunity.
Which one format was the most fun?
I've spent a lot of time in TV. So this setup you've got going here,
you like it.
I like it. It feels like home.
So how it comes together with Yahoo? Because Yahoo is not a TV.
Yeah, that's right.
Tell us more about that.
Yeah, which was an interesting time, right? I think this must have been 2009, was it? It could have been 2009.
I think it is 2009. Yeah.
This was when social
we
media
arrived
started
almost at the same time.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so from different angles, right? I think at this point, Facebook wasn't even on the scene. Twitter was around, but that was kind of it, right? So it was
not even big
days.
Google search either, right?
That's right.
Because a lot of searches would
correct.
be anchored on Yahoo, which
that's right.
helped you, right?
Correct. That's right. That's right. Yeah, it was still Yahoo Mail, Yahoo Search, Yahoo Answers, Yahoo 360, like all of these products.
Yeah, social product. Basically at the peak, because I was one of the product managers, so I saw stats at the peak, which was about the time that you and I were there, because it went downhill on the other side of us. Mail, Messenger, and like the Comstack was dominating in all of Asia, I think, except for Thailand, which had Microsoft.
Oh, that's right.
And
good memory.
Anybody you would meet in the Philippines would have a Yahoo mail address.
That's
their
right.
news on the Yahoo, probably searched on Yahoo, and then had Yahoo Messenger, which
was
on the
also
first
dominating,
chat.
by the way, in Israel.
Yeah.
Oh, was
My
it?
first email is Yahoo.
Bet it's full of spam right now.
I still have it.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating to see how all these things change over
And go away.
time, right? And go away, right? You also saw that pivotal moment when Gmail started to cross over, and started to eat Yahoo's lunch, and that was I remember that chart. You probably saw the same one, right? Number of Gmail accounts versus Yahoo.
Yeah.
And of course, the reason for that was the rise of Android as an operating system. You need
Mobile.
Yeah, well, you need a Gmail account, right, to get going. And so everyone just switched over at that time, and that I think was the one that really nailed, that coffin for Yahoo.
Yeah. So if you think about when you're in the military, you're doing the radio thing.
Yeah.
It was like the first form of something you did, and then now you look at today, it's crazy, right? But what has been the one? If it's a journalistic principle or just how Alan works or thinks, what's been a guiding light for you through all of this change in media that somehow keeps going even though the format and the times have changed?
That's an interesting question. I never thought about it that way. I think understanding how an operator thinks is really important, like figuring out the workflow, right? I was always a producer, reporter, editor kind of a person. So it was always about what do you need to do to get that done? How do you get good audio? How do you get good tape? How do you then, slice it as you go? How do you work with video editors? How do you communicate some of these things with them, right? And share that with them. So learning how to think like an operator really made a difference. And I think that was probably one of the, the things.
So the craft of it,
Yeah, but more from a hands-on technical thing. Like you gotta love the process, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not very fun otherwise, I think. Sure, you can chase a story. The stories are great and they're always fun. But to understand how to make that sausage yourself is always important.
Fair.
Yeah.
You started to say when you got into the room, you said this is not media. So what is it? Is it entertainment? Do you think the media actually convert into entertainment, or share more about your mind?
Yeah, this is a funny thing, right? Because here I am sitting here in a reasonably dark room, great sound, and you think, wow, this is not what the industry was 15 years ago, 20 years ago, right?
Maybe,
or 25
maybe
years
even
ago.
3.
Yeah, that's right. Correct. For you to assemble all of this gear, in a very small room was something you could not have done 20 years ago when I started my career, right? You would need much bigger equipment, more people in the room, all of these things.
Much more expensive.
Much more expensive. And the ability to just kind of, spin up something as quickly as this, anyone can do this from their bedrooms, right? So all of that has changed. And media has always been a way to communicate an idea of sorts, to me, right? Because of my slant toward journalism. But increasingly, media is just something we consume as part of our day, We don't go out looking for it. We don't even call it that anymore. While waiting for the elevator, everyone does the same thing on their phone, right? They open the first thing and...
Guilty.
Yeah. And everyone's just flicking it through, right? And you see media appearing in your chat feeds, for example, in a WhatsApp group, or you see it happening, I guess, Telegram, Instagram, like any one of these things. The crossover is there. You may call it a chat app, but at the end of the day, that's where you also consume your news and information from. So it's all one big blur, right? It's basically where you give your attention. Media is attention, I guess.
Fair. Yeah. And I think as much as the medium has changed, the attention dynamics kind of the same, but it's so unfortunately gamified now, right? That
it's hard to stay away from it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's ridiculous. And once you have kids, you see how this plays out and you start to get pretty
tougher.
worried.
So you think it's gamified or it's polarized? Because it's two different things, because maybe you want more action. Maybe you want it now.
Yeah.
Maybe for the things that we could wait for another, hour or two, now we actually instantly want to have it in our phone.
Yeah.
Do you think this is what that change, or is it like gamify versus, polarized in terms of let's have it now.
I think it was always about how do you grab attention. That's the whole point of media these days, right? And the only way to grab attention is to make sure that you have something that's really compelling, that stands out. And, the stuff that stands out these days is usually something that's highly emotive, highly provocative. That's the only way you get seen, right? You could live stream the entire budget session as we are in Singapore.
It's on
today.
right now, right?
It's on right now.
Yeah.
And where do you capture that attention, right? And where do you get people thinking and talking? And I think, in that sense of it, media is really about how do you grab attention? How do you slice something so that it looks compelling, that it, something that enrages, invokes, something that you act on. Yeah. Right. And usually the acting is just sending it off to your friends and telling them, look how ridiculous this is.
Yeah. And I think it's just because it's so easily accessible now, it's changed that maybe we think there's so much of it from a bad perspective.
Yeah.
But I was listening to somebody, I think it was Modern Wisdom, and the guy had somebody on that's like a historian that was explaining that, a lot of people don't realize like the first usage of the newspaper printing press was mostly all garbage. Like, it was like, don't vote for that guy. We heard the women are promiscuous in his county. There was no fact to it at all. But that was what, and it was the front page.
It was gossip, right?
It was the front page.
Yeah.
It's just that the only people that would have saw it were the ones that paid the whatever nickel to buy that thing, where now we can get it out so much freer, which creates probably more polarization. But it's always been that we've used the notion of saying terrible things as a method of getting attention, right?
Yeah. But also, to the point about polarization, I've often wondered were we always this different as people, right? And we just needed a way to get this out of our heads. And that's one, that's level one. And then you've got the algos that drive it and feed it, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I always wonder, like, did we always have different ideas about things?
One wonders.
We can never go back to that.
Yeah. So I had started to think I was going to have a coaching journey. And we talked a lot about that.
Yes.
I will admit I haven't done anything with it, but
Never too late.
Not you.
You're done. You did the course.
I didn't get certified. There's a difference.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a difference.
Credentialed
Not
is the word.
Yeah.
I mean, you can get certified, but if you want the credential, that's a different thing, right? That's an ICF, International Coaching
which
Federation.
you have, right? Or
No,
you have the.
I put in the time. I have not done the exam.
All right.
So I don't have the credential, but I have the certification from SMU for coaching. So.
But what kicked that into gear, that whole thing? Because it's very different than, hey, I'm doing media and running Splice and things like that.
That's kind of I'm trying to figure out how and when this first began. So with Splice, the work that we do is really mostly around consulting, right? So people pay us money to go solve a problem. All right, come here, solve this for me, which is great. And it's highly prescriptive, right? As you know, as a consultant yourself. When you go in, you are brought in to make something happen or to tell them what to do so that it can happen. That's great, right? And the one thing that I've come to realize over the years was that things didn't happen at a lot of these types of transformation journeys and consulting gigs because there was something else that was holding them back, right? And very often that came from a much deeper level as a person, as an entrepreneur. Why didn't you not take that extra step that you needed to make something happen? What was holding you back? And the deeper you went, the more you realize that these were stories that people were telling themselves. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I've not done enough in this space to qualify as this. Or I haven't read enough. Or I don't know what to do with this, where to go next, right? So there was always that hesitation that I saw in them. And so I started thinking, okay, we can keep going down this road of getting paid to prescribe, which is fine. Or I could do this at a deeper level and try to understand what is it that is motivating you, but also what is it that's holding you back, right? We all want certain kind of change in our lives, right? And if you're an entrepreneur, you want that change. You're trying to make something happen. If you are a media professional, if you're a journalist, you want to change somewhere in your life as well. And very often you don't know where, and you don't know why you're holding back from it, right? So that's when I started to take an interest in coaching, because I thought this could be the other side of what we do at Splice, right? Hire us to give you answers and to do something for you, or hire us to listen to you and help you understand what's holding you back. And coaching has really, it's one of those things. I tell this to everyone. I wish I did it earlier in my life, because it has been so rewarding personally, but also because it just changes it's a whole new lens on looking at people and work, and
in some of your
media.
engagements, is it combined? You're doing advisory work and coaching some of the people involved in the thing?
So I try to keep those two things separate, because it's very different, right?
Yeah.
The deliverable is very different. For consulting, you go, you solve it, you get paid, you leave.
Yeah.
Coaching, you want to keep that door open as much as possible, because you want that relationship. You want that person to feel that they can trust you, right? So it's not a directly transactional relationship. It's something that's open-ended. It's a journey that you walk with together, right? There's no power relationship in that one.
I'm getting more curious about Splice.
Yeah,
So
we
I
haven't
want-
talked about it.
Yeah,
We haven't talked, so I want to open this discussion.
Yeah.
First of all, tell us more about what is it, which type of consultancy do you provide,
Yeah.
which type of coaches, what can I see in the menu? When I open
yes. You're speaking like a product person. Well done. Actually, the timing is great, because 2 weeks ago we celebrated our 10th anniversary. We've been around
Wow,
for 10
congrats.
years. A long time, right? So I started Splice right after Yahoo, when the company started to lose interest in this region, started closing down a lot of these offices that I had set up, and I had my last year there was going around laying off people that I hired.
remember closing everything.
It was shit.
Yeah.
It was shit.
Tough. It's tough when
It's
everybody's
tough.
leaving and things are going. Yeah.
Yeah, and you can never be truly straight with people about a lot of things, right? You can only say what you know, and you can say what you think will happen. But for a whole year, I was doing this, explaining to people, okay, we're going to do another round of reviews. We're going to do another round of layoffs. And it was hard. It was hard going in, trying to keep a straight face about these things. And so at the end of year 6 at Yahoo, I was done. I was done with doing that. I was done with building a corporate career. One of the best things at Yahoo was just seeing how much further a lot of traditional newsrooms had to go, to make that leap over into digital. So when Yahoo was done as a career for me, people said, "Hey, why don't you come and help me with transforming our own newsrooms?" Right.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an easy start for Splice. We had customers from day one in that sense, right? So we went in. Early stage of Splice was figuring out how to transform a newsroom, right? You go in, you look at the workflows, again, from an operator's point of view. For a lot of these organizations, working with us was quite a simple thing, because, given my background as, in journalism and working the desk, doing the workflows, doing all of that, it was easy for me to win trust with the editorial staff. But also because of what I did at Yahoo, I knew how to talk to C-level executives, and I knew how to explain where things needed to go, right? So I was that nice sweet spot at a time when the industry didn't know where to go. Yeah. So that was an easy, first couple of years trying to figure out, okay, you're a big news organization, you're a newspaper publisher. How do I help you make that journey? So I did that for maybe about 3 years. And then the menu started to change. And the reason why it started to change was because a lot of these news organizations took too long to get shit done.
So this is around 2015, 2016?
That sounds about right. 2015 was when Splice started. So, and you realize that the sales cycle took way too long, right? With these large organizations, people coming and going. The person who held the budget yesterday, is no longer there. That kind of thing, right? And it gets very frustrating. And as a consultant, the one thing that you want to get out of this, apart from getting paid well, is case studies, right? You got to have those case studies
for the next one. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. And the longer these things take to play out, right? And the deliverable that you saw at the start of the journey just gets dimmer as you go. It's really hard to deliver a good case study that makes you look good, right? That you can learn from as well. And the other thing about being a consultant is that you can only go as fast as your clients can go, right? And you can only be as smart as they can. So that started to wear me down a little bit, right? Things took too long to happen. You were also not always challenged, because if the client is not ready to make this big leap of faith that you're drawing out for them, it doesn't matter, right? So you end up not learning anything as a consultant. It's fine to do the work, but it's even more fun if you're learning something as you go, right? As you take risks together with your client. So then we started to look more into the media startup space, because that was where some of this interesting work was being done. Smaller, scrappier teams that were digital first, that didn't have the legacy infrastructure to worry about, lower costs, easier, lower barrier to entry. All of that made that space suddenly really exciting, right? There were a whole bunch of new media startups that were, coming online, very exciting work. So over time, that's become our core focus. How do we help media startups build viable businesses? And increasingly, we're working more with creators as well. We're trying to understand, as a creator, what are 2 or 3 things, that keep you awake at night? How can we take that friction away from you? So we're trying to understand more of that as we go. Yeah, and over the course of 10 years, kind of built out a fantastic community that we're proud to serve.
Yeah, and I guess when did Splice Beta come along?
5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
About halfway through.
Yeah, the opportunity that we saw at that point was that there were a lot. Well, if you were someone in media, if you were a media professional, you really only had a couple of conferences that you could attend. And these conferences were usually geared toward big publishers looking good, sounding really smart on stage, some guy from some other country, and usually an old white guy, right? And so there was nothing here that celebrated what Asian media was doing. And so that became our opportunity. We saw that, the people that we thought were doing an amazing job, transforming the industry, were not these big publishers, right? It was always the smaller ones. So we thought, okay, what if we could create a festival that would celebrate that work, right? And make them heroes, because they would never otherwise find other ways to get recognition or support or a community around them. So that was what we did. And, we called it festival, right? From day one, because it was not going to be a stuffy, shirt and tie and suit kind of an event. It was quite literally, and we actually do say this in our dress code, come in t-shirt and shorts, and that was it. And that made a world of difference, right? This suddenly became a thriving community of media.
Is it growing every year? It's getting bigger, or because of the venue
Yeah, so that's a funny thing, right? We try to cap it, right? Okay. And so for the last few years, we've capped it at 250 seats. And the reason for that is that the venue that we use in Chiang Mai, which is Chiang Mai University itself, the amount of spaces are not that many to go around. But we also want to have that person-to-person relationship.
Smaller vibe.
Yeah, we wanted to have something that was smaller. That I would say, my co-founder Rishad and I, we probably know about 80% of people by their first names. And that's the way we kind of want to have it, right? When the doors open on day one, people walk in and we give everyone a hug, because we can manage with 250 people.
You know them.
Why Chiang Mai? When you say Chiang Mai, I'm like, why Chiang Mai?
So close to my heart.
I love Chiang Mai.
Yeah.
But why?
Yeah, it's so chilled, right? Everything is easygoing. No one's in a rush. We didn't want Singapore or like Hong Kong or Jakarta, just because people know people in those places. And the moment you get in, you're like, hey, I'm gonna go see an old buddy of mine, right? What is nice about Chiang Mai is that you don't really know anyone there. And so the moment you arrive, the first question they ask is, where are we doing drinks tonight? Yeah. And then all of a sudden you've got a bunch of people gathering, right? And they stick together because they don't know anyone else. So I like this idea of a captive audience. I think it makes a huge difference as people kind of chill and just hang out with each other. There's nowhere else to rush to, right? Everything that you kind of need to get to is within walking distance.
Yeah.
So that's one, having that captive audience. Second, I mean, it's so cheap, right? It doesn't matter where in Asia you come from. We have, community members all, from different countries, right? All over Asia. And so for them, getting into Chiang Mai is not hard. And for them to hang out there is not hard. For them to go get a beer with you is not hard, right? And we want to make it accessible from that point of view, right? Anywhere else in the world, gosh, I mean, you came to Singapore and you didn't have very much to spend. I mean, you could blow it all in one night.
Right? One dinner and it's gone. And then, you got to get on Grab and you're like, oh my God, it's like $30. So all of that stuff. So it's part of your business now, I would assume.
Yeah, it's a big part of the business.
Yeah, and
it's our biggest revenue line.
Got it. The event.
Yeah, the event.
And you just do the one per year.
We do the one per year, and people have been asking us, "Can you do a light version of that?"
Pick another city, like.
So,
yeah.
So it costs money, the ticket. How you monetize it? Sorry for.
Oh, it's no, please. We do two things here. So last year, if you were a journalist or freelancer or or a student, it was $50. It was simple. If you came from an institution, it was higher. You pay an institutional rate. And then we have sponsors. We bring together, a bunch of really great organizations that care about this space and the development of media professionals here. So a large part of that weight is carried by the sponsors themselves, which is great. And it allows us to keep prices really low for the people we want to attract. Yeah, and the fact is, Chiang Mai is a cheap place to hold events, right? If you're doing something small for 250 people, you could have nice restaurants, great F&B, cheap, easy to get stuff done, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and the Thais are easygoing about everything, right? You need a couple of rides. You need a couple of restaurants and
need a
stuff.
tuk-tuk for photos.
Yeah.
It's all there.
Yeah, you need like 5 Song Tao showing up, in one spot tomorrow. Yeah, sure, done.
Yeah.
Right. Not like in Singapore where it becomes a little bit more problematic sometimes.
Yeah. And do you think this is because I follow like one of the podcasts I like, Compound and Friends, right? And they've started this future-proof concept, which is kind of like a festival for investment professionals, people that help people manage their money. And that's, I think, a big part of their business now is the event, right?
Yeah.
Like, I kind of look around and I'm still wanting for good events. There's not a lot. Do you think
that's where it begins?
Yeah. And do you think, is this, as you talk to these people, like, I guess when you're talking to some of these media organizations, or do you think in the notion of startups, when we see that, there should be more events, and is there a way to do it, and kind of what's your view on that? Because I think you've been a very successful two guys building an event that didn't exist before, and it is a profit engine.
Yeah.
Just what's your view on that space, whether it's media or not?
I think the margins are great, right? I think people want to go to a highly curated event where you're not treated like, a customer. You're not, for us, we're not doing this to sell tickets, right? In that sense, we're doing it because we truly want to bring together interesting people, interesting journalists, entrepreneurs, funders, NGOs, because we believe that all of them should meet each other and work with each other and learn from each other, right? So we create a very high touch environment in that sense, right? So, before someone gets there, I already know who these people are, and I can say, look, I think you really do need to go meet this funder. I think there will be some interesting opportunities for you. So I'm already connecting people, right? So this is what we do. This is a very splice approach. Last year's theme was around hospitality, and this is the message that we want to bring to the community. You can build a business if you're highly focused on what you can deliver for someone, right? For us, it was hospitality. It's making you feel seen and not some stranger going to a conference that you paid $1,000 to attend, right? You want to equalize this as much as possible so that you get more out of that relationship that you're trying to build with people. And maybe this is where the coaching thing also comes in, right? It's really looking deeper into what someone wants, right? Someone will say to you, I want to go to a conference. Fine. What do you want to get out of it? I want to network. Okay. What does networking do for you? That's where it gets a little more interesting, right? And soon you find out, okay, this person needs a better plan. Business plan is shit. They need to grow their team, but they don't know how to. And that's where you start to pull out a bunch of these things. And I guess
for that smaller audience, you can go there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, it's easy to ask people, what do you want out of a conference, right? Yeah. And very often the answer is, I want to learn. Okay, great. What do you want to learn? Yeah, that's right. And why is this important to you at this point?
So you do small workshops, trying to understand like the structure.
That's right. So we maybe not workshops per se, but we do have different formats, right? So we've got stage stuff, big presentations, 1 to many. Workshops tend to be 1 to maybe 20. We have one-on-one clinics, right? So if I know that you need some product advice and you need, to know how to launch your next app, I'll pair you up with someone, right? So that you have a space that's quiet, that's comfortable, where both of you can have a conversation.
Nice.
Yeah. So it's highly, what's the word for it? Maybe bespoke might be a word for that, but it's highly intentional. That's the one I was going for. This was, something that we saw in a lot of people. You go to any conference, you see a bunch of people sitting at the back of the room, right?
Or in the hallways on their phone.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's like
that's right, and you wonder why. And as an organizer, that's what you look for.
Yeah, there's no engagement. Right?
There's no engagement because that person either feels intimidated, they feel like they don't have the right title in their names and their cards or whatever.
Yeah.
And they just don't know how to start.
They go for numbers, right?
They go for numbers, yeah.
Sheer size of things.
Correct.
How do you create that
That's right. So right at the outset, I mean, Rashad and I were very clear about this, that this was not going to be a mass, anonymous thing, right? It needed to be something highly functional, highly bespoke, highly intentional, right? If we see someone who's sitting on their own, one of us will go first and try to see if we can connect that person with someone, right? I think that's the way to do it. So, going back to your original question, I think events are really important, but to do an event that is highly intentional is very hard, right? You obviously have found, things that you need from the event space that you haven't seen out here. Figure out exactly what those are, right? How can you extract an understanding of what that problem is to solve, right? And then figure out what the UX is around that whole experience of someone being there. What do you want that to be like?
By the way, you say high touch. For me, what you're just describing is low touch, which is perfect. It's dealing things with gloves, which make the difference sometimes. And I used to work in Checkpoint Technologies for a few years, almost 6 years, like Fantastic. You in Yahoo. And one of the cultural theme was personal touch.
Oh yeah.
How do you do things with a personal touch? And this is what you describe. I think this makes a difference. When you can touch someone and he feels that he's special because you just ask him, hey, what's going on with you?
Yeah.
How can I assist you?
Yeah.
How it's going to look better. And I think it's beautiful the way you describe it.
Yeah.
I'm going to do a shift for a second. Okay. And go into the startup and innovation part of the ecosystem and speak about Nano.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just going to give a brief.
Yeah.
And we spoke about traditional media, events.
Yeah.
And you've been part of the tech ecosystem. And now you actually combine them together.
Yeah. Slowly.
Tell us more about that.
Okay, so let me start by saying we still haven't figured out Nano yet. Okay, when we launched this, it was launched with the premise that we're going to see a bunch of new media startups that were solopreneur driven that could reach a huge audience, or at least a very intentional audience, right? Simply by getting that AI layer right.
Mm-hmm.
That was the assumption right at the outset. Now the challenge for us at Splice very often is that the people that we engage with in our community, so there's a high selection bias here, right? People who talk to us and who are in that community tend to be people who've already started something, that that they might be interested in starting something. They are journalists or they're freelancers and they're trying to figure out what the next thing is. That's been our kind of sweet spot,
mm-hmm.
right? For better or for worse. So when we launched this, we didn't know what that mix was going to be. Did we want people who were from outside of this industry who saw opportunities, or did we want to cultivate something from within, right? And very often, people don't know what they want necessarily. And so we did an application process where people would say, okay, I think I want to build this, or I want to do this. And very often it was, I'm going to use AI to create more content. And we were like, no, come on. It needs to be more than that. Where's the imagination here? So that first round of applications, we were not quite happy with, because we were looking for something that's a bit more transformational, right? This is really that big bet that we want to see people make.
Mm-hmm.
One-person companies with a great AI stack to do all the things they needed to do. We really haven't seen it, and my guess is because we speak to a very media-centric community, all solutions tend to be media-driven, right? And we don't really want that anymore, because I don't think that's a good.
You're looking for outsiders, or just that people tackle a problem
with a little more imagination.
Yeah, without the history of.
Yeah, without the legacy and without the framing, right? So when someone throws in the word content in their application, there's a side of me that goes, oh, here we go again. Forget it.
Seen this before,
right? I don't want to see AI trying to solve content problems. It's boring. Show me something more, right? Show me how you were able to spin up an app that you worked on last night, with all these different parts that came together, and the audience research that you were able to derive from that. How were you able to slice up, the data that you've got from your Google Analytics to give you insights in a different way? Like, show me something that's really different. So all of this to say, we're going to reboot the whole thing. This time we're going to look further outside of this space, because, for us, again, it comes down to case studies. If we can present a great case study around how, solopreneurs have been able to do this, it's going to be spectacular, right?
You can help others.
Yeah, imagine at the next Splice beta, we could have a bunch of these on stage and go, okay, this is what they did, right? And now they're at this revenue point, and this is how they did it, all by themselves, right? So, it's interesting. You look at it from a bigger perspective. We started out with big legacy publishers, to media startups, to creators, and now to that solopreneur, right? And Rishad and I are literally, we're two men working on.
So you're like a pair of solopreneurs.
That's right. That's right.
But this is
dualpreneur.
I think this is the future. The future is going to be, you call it solopreneur, I'm calling it micro businesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? It's a micro businesses.
Yeah.
You don't need lots of people, as we spoke about this studio.
Yeah.
When we now have, we're one person over here that's running all the back end.
Yeah.
And these businesses might gonna have one or two. And I think, and this is the idea that I'm maybe bringing to you, trying to be creative on the spot, is maybe going to startups.
Yes.
When the startup doesn't have to be in media, but the CEO, the entrepreneur, the founder,
Correct.
he wants to be like the content creator, but he doesn't know how. So he's going to come from kind of a field that he's not familiar with.
Yeah.
And he's going to be more creative to create new things with the new tools that he have.
Absolutely.
So maybe this is the opportunity. That's
right. No, that's absolutely true. I think, what we found over the years is that journalists make the worst entrepreneurs, right? Because everything is content as a solution. The belief is that every problem that exists out there in terms of information can only be solved with content. And that's total rubbish, right? And that's been really, really hard to kind of break through with a lot of entrepreneurs because, taking that product mindset, you really do need to understand what is a problem that needs to be solved first, and then prescribe, or try a whole bunch of options.
And validate with the market. Yeah.
Yeah. And I keep telling them, do not assume that content is a solution here, right? So many of them default to content first. I'm like, no. Let's take that off the table. Let's talk about all the other things on the table right now, including the table, and then figure out what that solution might be.
Interesting. Yeah, I think everybody does somehow the content factory solves all problems.
Yeah, and that's a very journalistic approach, and it's also a very arrogant one because it's saying that my supply is the only way you're gonna live by.
So if you think about this, we'll end with kind of a hard one here, because you see all
wasn't hard already.
Yeah, decades of this stuff plus the work you're doing. What on one side worries you the most about journalism and media from your vantage point today? And then we want to end on a good note. What do you find kind of gives you a light in the tunnel or something you're excited about?
Yeah, I like that we're ending on a good note because I think my view of this space has become a bit negative of late, right? I think the biggest challenge for journalists and journalism is that we just don't know what we're doing. We don't know what we're selling, right? And we have a hard time explaining that to a new generation that's grown up without it, right? For those of us who've got teenage kids, they've grown up without any of this stuff, right? My last subscription to a physical newspaper was the Wall Street Journal, and it would get delivered every morning. My daughter was 4 years old at the time. She said, "Why do you waste money on this? This was yesterday's news."
Yeah. Probably didn't even read it all.
Yeah, exactly, right? And it just goes in the corner, right? But she was right. This is yesterday's news. So in her mind, she doesn't know what news is, right? She has a hard time defining what it is. And as journalists, we have a hard time saying what it is as well. In fact, it is so hard that we don't know how to say to you why you need to buy this as a product. What is journalism as a product? The closest I've come to understanding this is that journalism is a process. It's a process of looking at something, making sense of it, putting it out into the world in a format that, could be an article, podcast, video, but it needs to do something. And that last mile is the stuff that's missing right now. What is it meant to do? Right? It's easy.
I want to say deliver a message.
To whom?
To whom?
That's right.
I'm stuck.
And what are they supposed to do with it when they get it, right? So if you take that product market fit perspective on this one, it needs to be intentional. It needs to create utility and therefore create value for you, the person who's making this stuff. That's where we are right now, right? So in fact, I've been coaching a lot of journalists who are trying to unstuck themselves in this space. And very often it comes back down to the question of, why are you a journalist? What is it that you think you do that makes you unique in a profession like this, as a professional? They have a hard time explaining this, right? Because then, my follow-up would always be, well, you could ask a researcher what their processes are. It sounds exactly the same. You could ask a doctor what their processes are. It's exactly the same. You could ask a teacher. You could ask a cook, right? Everyone has a process. And very often, journalism is not unique in that sense, right? Just because we claim to deal in facts, right, doesn't mean that other professions don't. And so we cannot go out there and try to sell facts.
Or that my information's better than somebody else's.
That's right. That's right.
So maybe this is one of the professions that's gonna be non-relevant.
That's right. And this is why, looking into the next few years, I think this is going to be a very hard space. Do I believe that facts are needed? Yes. I do believe that we need a society that functions on facts and numbers and data.
Yeah, I think we're seeing evidence of what happens in a fact-free world.
Yeah, but
or fake news.
All the journalism in the world did not stop a whole bunch of these guys from getting elected.
Yeah.
Right. So let's keep that in mind as well. Right. And I think that's an important thing to try to grapple with, because we need to know how people make decisions and how people feel about things. And sometimes it comes down to the price of eggs. Right. And that's what it's about. Right. And, again, like today's a great day because it's Singapore's budget day. A lot of these things will come up.
Do you think eggs will come up in the budget?
Not eggs specifically.
Right.
But Singapore's got an interesting way of talking about cost of living,
Yes.
right? And very often it's throwing money out,
Yeah.
at people. Subsidies, right? So these things this is what I think about when I think about where information is going. We've got a new generation that don't understand the value of it, let alone want to pay for it. We don't see the outcomes that we're looking for as journalists, right? The belief was always that if we told the truth and we sold the facts, that this would be something that everybody would want and therefore act on. And that's not the case.
No.
So,
Okay.
existential crisis.
Yeah. Super interesting. I have more questions, but I think the time is, because my mind is starting to tick with few different places.
Yeah.
I think we can wrap up.
It's a heady subject.
Yeah.
It's kind of sad. It's sad, right?
Yeah.
But we do have to figure a way out of this one because, you guys are in the information space, right? You are part of the information ecosystem. News is just a small, tiny dot in that entire information ecosystem. And that's something we forget
It
very
weighs
often.
on me. When you say that, I start to go like, why am I doing this? Because it's like, I'm stressing myself out. But then I'm like, but if I'm talking to good people, asking good questions, and one or two people learn from it,
Yeah.
and it's useful, then it's okay, right?
Yeah.
Like,
I think
but then I worry about like, what's my position in that whole stack, right?
Well, I think you and I, I think we've talked about this a number of times as well. We approach this from a learning perspective, right? Like, what can I learn from this conversation? What can I learn from this content? Journalism is not about that, right? It's not about having that clear. The utility of it is never clear enough, and that's where the challenge is, right? But I think you're creating, this podcast because you're creating a way to learn and teach.
That's the plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's wonderful, and that's why that information ecosystem is as big as it is, and there's so much you can get out of it, as long as you're willing to look outside of news, right? If you're not calling yourself news and journalism, everything else is possible. Everything else is interesting, and there's so much to learn from, and that might just be the good note that we end on.
We'll leave it. We'll let that be the good note.
Yeah.
Dan, thanks for the affirmation.
Thank you. Okay, we're gonna do our closing.
Okay.
If you're gonna go back to your 20 years old, what you would tell him?
If I had to talk to my 20-year-old self, I would tell him that he should. How should I phrase this? I would teach him to learn to ask better questions, because better questions give you better answers. And when you get better answers, you have a better life, generally, I think. Right? I think having the confidence to ask deeper questions would have made my 20-year-old self a lot more confident. I think my 20-year-old self would have gotten a lot more out of that journey, right? And I imagine how that person would have been, had he had the confidence to figure this stuff out early on, right? Ask with curiosity, learn with wisdom, and just get better answers, right? With better answers, you get to live a better life, I think.
It's a crazy theme for life. I think about making sure ask better questions. Because we're not actually ever taught that, right?
That's right.
If you think about it.
And this is one of the things that came up with coaching, right? That gave me a chance to really understand it. Yeah.
Ask better questions.
It's the best part of it, right? And that's a superpower. I think, the most successful people ask the best questions. They say the least and they
And it gets used
They enlighten.
everywhere, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the one thing I did take away from it. Like, it gets used with kids and family. Like I didn't think it could or should,
Yeah.
because I probably wasn't taught that. But
That's true.
it's like a superpower, right?
That's absolutely it.
Asking better questions.
I feel like I became a better dad as a result of coaching, right? Learning how to think as a coach.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. No, go and do that credential, man.
No, I'm doing this. I told
so
everybody
close
this
to it.
is my version of it. Like I feel okay with it.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? You could probably count, this as your 100 hours, by the way. I'm just saying.
Probably. I'll talk to Geraldine about that. We're about the same age. I'm a little older than you. And I know we've talked about this before personally, but
Yeah.
health and wellness, mental, it's changed a lot for you over the years, but what do you kind of focus on now to kind of stay in the game?
I'm learning to give myself more permission to do stuff for me, right? I think in your 20s, you're building your career, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to build, a successful career, you're trying to find a mate, like all of these things. And then you find a mate, you have kids, and life kind of takes you in a different direction, right? At 50, I'm starting to understand the importance of allowing myself to do what's right for me and being okay with it, right? And I'm also seeing it from a perspective that, the best thing about going to midlife is that you have the ability to finally become the person you were meant to be without all that noise, and to do things that you really want to, live the life that you want to live, right? Because you look around you and you see that things could change very quickly. We're that age group where people who are closest to us start having health issues and family issues, and all these things start to come up, right, as we get older. And so whenever you see that opportunity to go and do something, right, for yourself. Coaching was one of those gifts for myself, right? Because at that time I had no idea how I was going to monetize in terms of work, but I wanted to do it for myself. Second thing that I'm doing, and I'm saying this out loud because I want to be held accountable.
Here we go.
Yeah, it's recorded.
I'm working on getting my pilot's license this year.
Oh, wow.
It's something I've always wanted since I was a kid, and now I'm actually doing it, right?
Fantastic.
Yeah, and this is one of those things. I mean, no one else benefits from it except me, right? My family does not want to get on a plane with me. So I'm strictly doing this for myself, and I'm absolutely excited by it.
That's cool.
Yeah,
Very cool.
I'll get on with you. Let me know when you're ready.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. I have a lot of friends who did it. I'm too afraid to do it myself, but
I would join as well. I like
Yeah,
risk. So
Yeah,
we used to do it in California. We called it $150 burger.
Oh yes,
Like
that's right.
Yeah,
Burger
we go-
flights.
Yeah. Everybody chip in, 150 eat, fly,
Yeah,
land at a small airport,
That's
eat
right.
whatever was there at the diner and a burger, and fly back. And
yeah, and that's because
somebody got their
as
training
a
time.
private pilot license, under that you're not supposed to take commercial flights, right?
Correct.
You can't do things commercially, but you can go and fly and get a $150 burger.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's a great concept.
Last one, good book or a TV show or something that you want to recommend, maybe a podcast beside the generalist.
Oh, jeez. I consume a whole bunch of things. I don't really have one that. Oh, actually, you know what? Here's a book. If I can get the title right, I can never remember titles these days.
It's all right. We can search for it.
Yeah, and I wonder, is it because I'm no longer holding something physically that I look at? Anyway.
I would say it's just the over 50 thing, but we'll leave that to the side.
Yeah, that's likely true. And this is why I need to do my pilot's license before it's too late.
Too late to remember.
Okay, so where was I? It's called "Do Not Believe Everything You Think."
Oh,
Have you heard of this?
no.
No.
I'll look it up though.
Please look it up. And the author's name
We'll get it
escapes
in the
me.
show notes. Don't worry.
I think it's John Nguyen or Joseph Nguyen or something like that.
Believe
And
everything you think.
And it's really great. And let me try to summarize it as best as I can, right? The whole point of his book is really to help you let go of suffering and let go of things, right? So he makes that distinction between thinking and thoughts. As a human being, you have thoughts. Everyone has thoughts. But you don't have to be thinking about it, right? So his whole thing is about how do you apply some of this Buddhist philosophy of letting things go, right? Don't let them get to you. Things you can let things go. You can think about it and you can let it go. And I thought that was really powerful. And I've used this with a number of my coaches as well, and it's really quite powerful.
Do not believe everything you think. We'll look it up.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Alan, this was fun. Thanks for doing this. Thank you for
having me.
Opening it up and going deep.
I learned a lot. Thank you.
So did I.
Cool. All right.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay, thank you.